For nearly 5 decades, one face has stood as a symbol of grace under pressure, of beauty that never seemed to fade, and a quiet resilience that outlasted every trend Hollywood ever produced. Jaclyn Smith became a household name the moment she stepped into the role of Kelly Garrett on Charlie's Angels, and in the years since, she has built an empire, survived cancer, buried friends, weathered 3 divorces, and finally found a peace few stars of her era ever managed to reach. Now, as she has crossed into her 9th decade of life, cameras have caught her again, and what people are seeing has stopped them in their tracks. This is the real story of how Jaclyn Smith got here, and why, at nearly 80 years old, she still looks like she stepped out of 1976. Jaclyn Ellen Smith was born on October 26, 1945, in Houston, Texas, into a household that had nothing to do with show business. Her father was a dentist, steady and disciplined, and her mother brought warmth and elegance into a home that would later define her daughter's public image. There were no actors in the family tree, no early auditions, no stage moms pushing her toward Hollywood. Instead, young Jaclyn grew up rooted in ordinary Southern life, going to school, attending church, and absorbing the quiet rhythms of a close-knit family. What set her apart wasn't ambition in the traditional sense. It was an early, almost instinctive pull toward beauty and performance, first expressed through ballet rather than acting. After high school, she enrolled briefly at Trinity University in San Antonio, but academics never held her attention the way movement did. She eventually left for New York City, chasing something she couldn't yet name, and threw herself into ballet training at one of the most demanding schools in the country. The discipline she absorbed on those studio floors, the attention, precision, and form, would quietly shape the work ethic she carried into every chapter that followed. New York wasn't kind to aspiring dancers looking for steady income, so Jaclyn began picking up modeling jobs to pay her bills. It didn't take long for casting directors and ad agencies to notice her. She had a calm, photogenic presence that translated beautifully to television, and by the early 1970s, she had become one of the most recognizable faces in American advertising. Her defining moment came when she was chosen as a spokesperson for Breck Shampoo, earning her a spot among the famous Breck Girls, an honor that put her glossy hair and effortless poise into millions of homes. She later modeled for Wella Balsam as well, cementing her status as the face of clean, classic American beauty. But modeling was never the destination for Jaclyn. It was a stepping stone. While the ad campaigns rolled in, she quietly enrolled in acting classes and began chasing small television parts, mostly commercials and background roles. She wasn't in a rush, and she wasn't chasing overnight fame. She was building a foundation, one unglamorous audition at a time, patient in a way that many of her more impulsive peers were not. That patience paid off in spectacular fashion in 1976, when producer Aaron Spelling introduced television audiences to Charlie's Angels, a detective drama built around 3 women working for an unseen boss. The premise was daring for its time, tapping directly into a cultural moment when women's roles on screen and in society were shifting fast. Jaclyn wasn't the producer's first choice for the role of Kelly Garrett. That part had briefly been linked to actress Kate Jackson, who ultimately chose to play Sabrina Duncan instead, and to another actress who dropped out during the casting process. Jaclyn stepped in almost as an afterthought in the planning stages, and within episodes, it was obvious she was a perfect fit. She brought something to Kelly Garrett that wasn't necessarily written into the scripts, a soft-spoken confidence layered over real intelligence. Her chemistry with co-stars Farrah Fawcett and Kate Jackson helped turn the show into a cultural phenomenon almost overnight. Millions of viewers tuned in weekly, and while the show is often remembered for its action sequences and fashion, much of its emotional stability came from Jaclyn's grounded screen presence. She would go on to be the only original Angel to stay with the series for an entire 5-season run, even as other cast members cycled in and out. That loyalty earned her a level of respect within the industry that fame alone rarely buys. By the height of the show's popularity, Jaclyn had become more than a television star. She landed a cover of Time magazine, a rare feat for an actress in that era, and her face was suddenly everywhere, from talk shows to red carpets. Yet even as her celebrity grew, she was already thinking several steps ahead, toward a version of her career that extended far beyond acting. Long before it became common for celebrities to launch clothing lines and lifestyle brands, Jaclyn Smith saw the opportunity, hiding in her own image. In 1985, she partnered with Kmart to launch an affordable clothing line under her name. At the time, plenty of people in the industry questioned the move, wondering why a major television star would attach herself to a discount retailer. Jaclyn ignored the skepticism, and the partnership grew into one of the most successful celebrity-branded retail lines in American history, generating hundreds of millions of dollars over the years it ran. She later expanded that brand into home decor, bedding, and eventually skincare, proving that accessible pricing didn't have to mean sacrificing style. Her business instincts were sharp precisely because she never let modeling fame distract her from bigger goals earlier in her career. That same discipline carried into the boardroom, where she treated her retail ventures with the same seriousness she brought to acting. While her professional life followed an upward trajectory, Jaclyn's personal life during those same years was far more turbulent than her poised public image suggested. In 1968, at just 23 years old, she married actor Roger Davis, a rising star in his own right. On paper, they looked like a golden Hollywood couple, but the marriage struggled under the weight of two competing careers, and it ended in divorce in 1975, 7 years after it began. Jaclyn has never spoken bitterly about that chapter, though she has acknowledged in interviews that she lost herself somewhat in trying to support Davis's ambitions instead of her own. Just 3 years later, in 1978, she married actor Dennis Cole, who would appear alongside her on Charlie's Angels. Cole came into a relationship with a young son, Joe Cole, from a previous relationship, and for a while the marriage carried the appearance of a stable, supportive Hollywood partnership. But the pressures of fame, combined with tension over media attention, eventually wore the relationship down. The couple divorced in 1981 after 2.5 years of marriage. Jaclyn later reflected that the constant publicity played a role in the split, admitting that being labeled in headlines overshadowed her husband's own sense of identity within the relationship. That marriage carried a tragic postscript years later. In 1991, her former stepson Joe Cole, who had grown into a writer and close friend of musician Henry Rollins, was killed during a home invasion in Los Angeles. He was only 30 years old. Even though Jaclyn and Dennis had long since divorced, she had helped raise Joe during their years together, and his death struck her deeply. The same year her second marriage ended, 1981, Jaclyn married British cinematographer Tony Richmond, whose credits included acclaimed films in the science fiction and drama genres. Richmond brought a different kind of creative energy into her life, and for a period it seemed like she had finally found lasting stability. Together they had 2 children, and Jaclyn has often described motherhood as one of the most grounding experiences of her life, giving her perspective that fame and business success never could. Even so, the marriage eventually drifted apart, and the couple divorced in 1989 after 8 years together, this time without public drama or bitterness, just a quiet acknowledgement that their paths had diverged. After 3 marriages and 3 divorces, most people might have given up on the idea of lasting romance. Jaclyn didn't. In 1997, she met a man who had no connection to show business at all, a cardiothoracic surgeon named Brad Allen. Their paths had actually crossed once before, when Allen operated on Jaclyn's father, and fate brought them back together years later. Unlike her previous relationships, which had all moved quickly, Jaclyn took her time getting to know Brad, building the relationship gradually and largely away from public attention. The two married in 1997, and their partnership has now lasted nearly 3 decades, making it by far the longest and steadiest chapter of her romantic life. In interviews over the years, Jaclyn has consistently described Brad as her best friend and the great love of her life, crediting their marriage with the kind of calm she never found in her earlier relationships. She has said that a happy, healthy home life, more than any beauty routine, is what has kept her feeling and looking vibrant for so long. By the early 2000s, Jaclyn had already lived through more career reinventions than most performers manage in a lifetime. Then in 2002, a routine checkup delivered news that stopped her cold. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, caught early and without any prior warning signs. She had no family history of the disease and had always taken her health seriously, which made the diagnosis all the more disorienting. She underwent a lumpectomy followed by radiation treatment, a process that was physically and emotionally exhausting. True to her nature, Jaclyn refused to disappear from view during treatment. At the time, she was filming the television series The District, and she continued working through much of her recovery rather than stepping back from her responsibilities. That same year, she also launched a furniture line, expanding her retail brand even as her body was recovering from radiation. In the years that followed, she became a genuine advocate for early detection and women's health, lending her voice to awareness campaigns focused on encouraging regular screenings and open conversations about breast cancer risk. Her advocacy carried extra weight because it came from lived experience rather than a scripted public service message. Her connection to the disease didn't end with her own diagnosis. Her former Charlie's Angels co-star Kate Jackson had already survived breast cancer years earlier, and the two leaned on each other during Jaclyn's own treatment, a bond forged partly through shared experience. Then came the devastating news that fellow Angel Farrah Fawcett had been diagnosed with a rare and aggressive cancer in 2006. Unlike Jaclyn's relatively private recovery, Farrah's illness became intensely public, chronicled by tabloids in a way that left her little room for dignity or privacy. Jaclyn stood by her throughout, often visiting quietly and shielding her from unnecessary intrusion. When Farrah passed away in 2009, Jaclyn was one of the few people from her inner circle who spoke publicly about the loss, describing her friend's courage in her final days. For someone who spent decades in the public eye, Jaclyn largely avoided the tabloid scandals that follow so many long careers in entertainment. Her name rarely showed up in headlines for the wrong reasons. Still, her career wasn't entirely free of tension. During her marriage to Dennis Cole, whose reputation as a charismatic, attention-seeking personality contrasted sharply with her own quieter disposition, industry insiders speculated that friction between their public images contributed to strain behind closed doors. Perhaps more painfully, when her breast cancer diagnosis leaked to the press in 2002 before she had chosen to go public herself, it represented one of the rare moments she felt her privacy had been genuinely violated. Rather than retreating, she chose to reclaim the narrative on her own terms, later using interviews to turn that invasion of privacy into a platform for advocacy. There was also lingering speculation about tension on the set of Charlie's Angels during its fourth season, after Kate Jackson's departure and the arrival of a new cast member. Rumors of friction among the cast circulated in entertainment columns at the time, though no one from the original cast ever confirmed the feud publicly, and Jaclyn herself never engaged with the gossip. The new cast member left after just one season, which only fueled speculation, but the show's other stars, including Jaclyn, remained notably tight-lipped about what, if anything, had actually happened behind the scenes. In late October 2025, Jaclyn Smith quietly crossed a milestone that once seemed unimaginable for a star of her generation. She turned 80 years old. Rather than fading from view the way so many stars of her era eventually do, she marked the occasion by continuing to show up and show up well. Just months later, in May 2026, she walked the red carpet at the Paley Honors Spring Gala in New York City alongside her longtime friend and former co-star Kate Jackson, there to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Charlie's Angels' original 1976 premiere. Photos from that night spread quickly across social media, and fans reacted with genuine disbelief at how youthful both women appeared. When asked directly what her secret was, Jaclyn kept her answer simple and unglamorous. She credited love and family over any skincare regimen or cosmetic procedure, pointing to her marriage, her 2 children, and her 3 granddaughters as the real source of her glow. She has said in past interviews that she has never smoked, never used drugs, exercises daily, and relies on her husband's medical guidance about diet and nutrition to stay healthy. She has also noted that refusing to obsess over aging has kept her from feeling weighed down by it, choosing instead to stay engaged and challenged through work. That reunion with Kate Jackson wasn't a one-off either. The two have remained close for decades, a friendship that has outlasted the show that made them famous, outlasted the loss of their co-star Farrah Fawcett, and outlasted every fleeting Hollywood trend in between. Fans have pointed to that enduring bond as part of what makes Jaclyn's story feel different from so many other former television stars, who often fade from each other's lives as quickly as they fade from the public eye. Even as she approaches her mid-80s, Jaclyn Smith isn't finished telling her story. She has spent the past couple of years working on a memoir, reportedly set for release later this year, in which she has said she intends to share behind-the-scenes stories that fans have asked about for decades, along with a more personal look at parts of her life she has kept private until now. She has described wanting the book to let people see a side of her they haven't seen before, beyond the polished image of Kelly Garrett or the poised spokeswoman for her retail lines. She has also continued to build on the business side of her career, working alongside her husband on a skincare line that blends her decades of experience in beauty with his medical background. It's a rare full-circle moment, combining the personal and professional in a way that feels authentic rather than manufactured. Looking back across nearly 6 decades in the public eye, it's hard to find another star who has weathered as much change with as much composure as Jaclyn Smith. She survived the end of 3 marriages before finding lasting love with a man completely outside the entertainment world. She faced a cancer diagnosis privately and then chose to use that experience to help other women take their own health seriously. She watched friends and former co-stars battle their own devastating illnesses, and she stood beside them without ever making a moment about herself. She built a business empire out of a partnership many people doubted, and she proved them all wrong. Now, as she nears the middle of her 9th decade, cameras keep catching her looking remarkably like the woman who once captivated television audiences as Kelly Garrett, not because of any dramatic transformation, but because of decades of consistency, discipline, and a kind of grace that never needed reinventing. Her story isn't one of a star clinging to relevance. It's the story of a woman who simply never stopped showing up on her own terms at every stage of her life. Would you love to see Jaclyn Smith share even more of her story in the years ahead? Let us know what you think in the comment below. And if you enjoyed this look back at her remarkable life, don't forget to like this video and subscribe.